Hello, what's up guys? I'm Kyle from KGR, and today we're looking at Jakks Pacific Death Egg Robot playset. Now on the box it says Giant Eggman Robot playset, but it's the Death Egg Robot, let's be real. This thing looks so cool, I love it. Now this thing came out last year, so me doing a review now is kinda outdated, kinda late. But when I did a relevant review of this Eggman Robot playset, I absolutely hated it, and I compared it to this guy. And people wanted me to do a review on it now, so here it is. Now, like I said, this came out last year. This is to help celebrate the 30th anniversary, and this is an awesome toy to do that. It also did come with a little catapult and Sonic, and we'll get a closer look at those real soon. But before we get into the review, I want to ask you guys a comment of the day. What's your favorite classic Sonic game? Personally, I don't really have one all that much. I played them as a kid, and I was never good at them, and as an adult, I still never got good at them. I was more into the Sonic Adventure games going on forward after that, but every time I played a classic Sonic game, I died after like the second or third level. I'm like, you know what? I'm good. So as someone who doesn't appreciate the classic Sonic games like one should, this is still too cool not to have. I love this thing. So enough of me stalling, let's take a look at this thing. Now, like I said earlier, he also comes with a little Sonic and a catapult. The Sonic is mostly made out of rubber, so when it hits this, it doesn't damage or transfer paint or anything. So, good on them for doing that. That's actually a good idea. And then the catapult, it's very simple. It's molded gray, but then there's like a little bit of yellow paint all around. Very simplistic, but it works. It looks fine. But those aren't the reasons why we bought this thing. The reason we bought this thing is because of how cool this thing looks. Not because of the gimmick. The gimmick is a plus. But we bought it because how great this thing looks. And yeah, this thing looks incredible. This is the first Death Egg Robot toy we've ever gotten. So Jakks Pacific had, I want to say, a lot on their plate, a lot of hype to live up to. But this thing's so cool looking. I love this thing. Now this thing almost counts as an action figure. This thing is articulated. You got a little bit of rotation at the head. You can't do a 360, but you can move his head. To be honest, I didn't know that until like last week. I was just messing with it and I'm like, oh, hello. I didn't know it could do that or if it needed to do that. So they didn't have to do that, but I'm happy they did though. And then the shoulders, they can rotate out about that far. Whoops, that happens. We'll get into that in a minute. And then you can rotate the elbows if you need to. Whoops. You can bend it backwards if you want to. I don't recommend doing that, but you can. Then, I guess, son of a... Let's try that again. So the hips can rotate technically, but then he's gonna have a hard time standing, so I wouldn't really recommend moving the hips all that much. Plus, the joints are very tight. And then the knees have clicky joints. You can click it twice, and then if you try to go further than that, his leg just comes off. You can probably see one of the flaws in this toy. But before we get into the gripes of this toy, let me show you one of the cool things about this thing. So in his center, if you press it, he gets damaged, okay? And you hit that 3 times like the boss fight, and then he dies. He falls apart. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention you can rotate his shoulders, but as you can tell, not the fact that it falls off. That's not the point I wanted to make. It's very loose. You can't really pose this thing. On the box, on the other hand, it does show how he's posable and like it shows him in different poses. But they did some heavy Photoshop on that one because he needs an assistant to like keep this thing up. It's ridiculous. I don't think they make a pill to help this one stay up, but it disappoints me. And so does that. But let me show you something that's not so disappointing. So like I was saying, you press the center 3 times and then he dies. So the way you have to hit that is that you use the catapult with Sonic and try to aim for his center. And of course you can't really see it all that well from up there, so we're gonna bring it down here a little bit and we're gonna actually play with this thing. So you just take the catapult, you plop Sonic in there, and you aim and hope for the best. Ah! Yeah! It's not that the thing doesn't work. You just gotta be good at aiming. It functions well. But as you can tell, his arms and legs fall apart just like the game, and that is freaking sweet. But if you ever get concerned about this thing falling and then breaking and falling apart, some of the pieces that are extended out, like his little antenna looking thing and his mustache, thankfully are rubbery, so they can take a hit when they fall and they'll be just fine. Now this is a good point I forgot to mention. It's a good thing this happened because I probably wouldn't have brought it up. So sometimes the shoulder pad can fall off on this thing, but that doesn't mean it's broken, thankfully. It just slides back in and then it's fine. See? There we go. Just pop it back on and you're solid. Now putting this thing back together isn't very difficult either. There's like a little grip on top of here to help you do it, but I like just doing this. And there you go. And then putting the legs and arms in do have a little bit of a satisfying click when you press it in right. You gotta just feel it. It's kind of crunchy. Thankfully, you don't have to slam them in there, but he's good now. He's ready to play again. But that's not his only gimmick. You actually can have a little bit of fun with it. Like, you can projectile his hands. They don't go very far, so hopefully getting into someone's eye isn't going to be much of a problem. Unless you pick it up and you're like, hey, this is what you get for stealing my pencil at school. And go right in their eye and go, eh. But then you're probably going to get beat up because you brought this thing to school. So don't do that. And then also, his jetpack can have flames coming out of it. So that's actually kind of neat. These things, they're not too transparent. There's a little tiny bit of transparency. So if light does hit it, it does clear, like it does glow a little bit, but for the most part it's just the way it looks. It's fine. So I like how they do encourage you to actually play with this thing like an action figure besides just having it just be a target for you. But the biggest bummer are the shoulders. The shoulders, they don't really hold much of a pose. But there is one more gripe I do have with this thing that it's kind of more of a longevity thing. My main problem with this thing is the spring-loaded mechanism in here. So, as a kid, if you were ever into Yu-Gi-Oh! Way back in the, like, mid-2000s, you saw what a dual disc is. And that had a spring-loaded mechanism to help it transform from standby to dual mode. Unfortunately, over time, the little plastic clips in there and the springs and all that stuff, parts wore out, and it either became super sensitive so you didn't have to press the button, or just didn't transform properly, or just never locked back in place anymore. But because of how sensitive this thing is and how quickly it transitions from being plain to damaged, I have a feeling that the same thing is going to happen with this thing over time. So whether you're playing with this thing too much, or if you're in a very moist area, and it's starting to rain really bad. It looks really gross outside. Oof. So anyway, if it's in a moist area, also for example, the spring could rust and then destroy that thing. But most Sonic collectors are just going to have this just sit on their shelf. They're going to play with this gimmick once or twice and maybe show it to a few people. But then after that, they're mostly done with it. But I have a feeling that since this is the only Death Egg Robot toy out there, this is going to be something that's going to be kind of sought after over time. Like the Jazzwares figures. So I kind of want to buy another one of these just to keep it in the box and then just sell it, like have it be an investment. It is storming outside. Oh boy. I'm so happy I did most of my stuff today outside. And some of you may be wondering how the paint looks on this guy. I mean, for the most part, like, it's painted well. It is a child's toy, so there are some missteps. Like there's some like little smudges that don't belong there or whatever. But this is a kid's toy. Collectors can collect this, yes, but it's not an adult collectible. This is a child's toy. So any mispaints or whatever, or any like things that are not properly in place, I'm not upset about. I knew going in, this ain't a $50 Figma or anything like that. It's not an SH Figure Arts. This is a Jakks Pacific child's toy. But for the paint job they did nail it pretty well on this guy. I'm actually really happy with how this thing turned out. And I do also want to compare this to a couple of figures, because there's classic Sonic figures you want to pair this thing with. So we're going to be comparing it to a couple of different toy lines. The first one I want to do is the toy line that I primarily collect for, and that is Jazzwares. This is Jazzwares Classic Sonic. And as you can tell, there is quite a bit of size difference in here. Whether it scales properly, that's completely up to you, because there are different sizes for this thing. If you're playing Sonic Generations, there's a completely different size. If you're playing Sonic 2, there's a different size. I'm not sure if he appears in anything else, but there are different sizes to him. But I'm happy with this scale personally. Then this one is from Tomy, back when Tomy had the license, and I think this one works even better. Unfortunately, I don't have a Classic Sonic from Jakks, because I already have 2 of these Classic Sonics. I don't need another one. However, I do have a Mighty the Armadillo from Jakks in the, I think it's a 2.5-inch line. So I'm happy with this scale. I think this works really well. And then I also pulled out Metal Sonic, just because he's also pretty cool. As you can tell, if you compare these little Classic Sonics over here, the one that I comes with compared to these guys, obviously there's a huge size difference, but I still think it looks fantastic. So do I recommend grabbing this thing? Absolutely. The thing is too cool not to have. It has its problems. It's not a perfect action figure. It's not really much of an action figure. It tries to be one, but it's not, because these shoulders cannot hold a pose. There are modifications you can do to adjust that, so you can actually get a nice pose out of him, but it gets rid of the gimmick of him falling apart. So how you want to do that is completely up to you. Personally, I think it would have been cool if there was like some type of switch you can do to like have a tighter grip on these things so you can actually play with it properly, but it's fine. It's a trade-off you have to make, and although it sucks that you can't pose it, the gimmick itself is so cool. I'd rather have the gimmick than this. Although the gimmick is going to be played with once or twice and then put on a shelf, this thing makes a beautiful shelf piece. I honestly recommend grabbing 2 of these. One to keep in the box so you can flip it in the future, and then one to have on your shelf to actually display. But let me know in the comments, do you have this thing yet? Do you plan on grabbing this thing now? Because I think this thing is still somewhat available in stores. If it's not available in stores, someone online has it, whether it be Target, GameStop, or I don't know, Amazon. Amazon should have one too. This thing is still readily available for now, so grab them while you can. I think this thing was actually 40 bucks when it first came out. Let me look real quick. Yeah, according to Amazon, this thing was 40 bucks, which 40 bucks, it's a little pricey, but I had no problem paying that. But right now on Amazon, it's on sale for 33 bucks as of this recording. So I have a link for that in the description if you want to pick it up. For 33 bucks, this thing is definitely worth it. But that's it for the review. So if you're new and you like what you saw, you know what to do. In the description, there's going to be my social media. I have toy photography on my Instagram. I haven't posted on there in a while, but I still post pictures on there every once in a while. And let me know in the comments, do you plan on grabbing this thing? Do you already have it? Are you gonna grab one now? Like, what's your story with this guy? And as always, thank you so much for watching, and I love you guys to death. So I'll see you on the next one. So peace.